never believed in the supernatural or anything beyond the ordinary. I always thought that ghost stories were just tales to scare children. But what happened to me during that trip changed my life forever. It was supposed to be a routine work trip, nothing more than a quick drive from my city to a remote town for a meeting. I had done it 100 times before, driving through quiet roads, listening to the radio, and enjoying the solitude. But this time was different. The weather forecast predicted a storm, but I didn't think much of it. I left the city in the early afternoon, expecting to arrive by evening. As I drove further from the city, the sky darkened, and the first drops of rain hit my windshield. The roads were nearly empty, just as I liked it, but the storm intensified quickly. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and the rain turned into a torrential downpour, making it nearly impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. My GPS suddenly lost signal, leaving me to rely on the barely visible road signs. I was on a stretch of road I didn't recognize, winding through dense, dark forests. The storm was getting worse, and I knew I had to find shelter soon. That's when I saw it. A small, dimly lit sign pointing to a motel just a few miles ahead. Relieved, I turned off the main road and followed the narrow, winding path toward the motel. The road seemed to go on forever, twisting and turning through the forest, and I started to feel uneasy. The trees closed in on either side, and the storm showed no signs of letting up. Finally, I saw the motel, a rundown, old building with a flickering neon sign that read, "Vacancy." I pulled into the parking lot and hurried inside, hoping to get out of the storm. The lobby was empty, except for a single man behind the counter, who looked up as I entered. His expression was blank, almost unsettling, but I was too tired and wet to care. "One room, please," I said, my voice echoing in the eerily silent lobby. The man handed me a key without a word, pointing down a dimly lit hallway. I noticed there were no other cars in the parking lot and no other guests around, but I brushed it off. It was a small, out-of-the-way place after all. I reached my room and unlocked the door, finding it surprisingly clean but incredibly outdated. The bed creaked as I sat down, and the dim light above buzzed faintly. I was exhausted, so I decided to take a quick shower before getting some rest. As I stepped into the bathroom, I felt an overwhelming sense of unease. The room felt wrong. The mirror was foggy, and the air was thick with humidity despite the cold outside. I tried to ignore it, but as I turned on the shower, I heard something, like whispering, coming from the drain. I leaned in closer, trying to make out the words, but they were too faint. My heart raced, and I quickly backed away, deciding to skip the shower altogether. I dried off and got into bed, pulling the covers tightly around me. That's when I heard it again, the whispering, but this time it was clearer, more distinct. It was coming from right outside my door. I froze, every hair on my body standing on end. I listened intently, and the whispering grew louder, more insistent. I could make out words now, though they made no sense. A low, raspy voice speaking in a language I didn't understand. The door handle rattled, and I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. Slowly, I got out of bed and crept toward the door. The whispering stopped abruptly as I reached for the handle. I hesitated, my hand trembling, but I had to know. I yanked the door open and nothing. The hallway was empty, silent except for the distant sound of rain. My heart pounded in my chest as I stepped into the hallway, looking around. No one was there, but the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. I quickly retreated back to my room, locking the door behind me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was horribly wrong, but I was too scared to leave. I lay in bed, wide awake, listening to the storm outside, and trying to ignore the creeping fear that was clawing at my sanity. At some point, I must have drifted off because I woke up to complete silence. The storm had passed, and the sun was rising, casting a pale light through the curtains. I felt a wave of relief, thinking that maybe it was all just a bad dream. But as I gathered my things and prepared to leave, I noticed something on the floor. A piece of paper, old and yellowed, lying just inside the door. I picked it up and unfolded it, my hands shaking. The paper was blank, except for a single word written in faded ink: leave. I didn't need any more convincing. I grabbed my bag and ran out of the room, not stopping until I was in my car, speeding away from that motel as fast as I could. To this day, I don't know what happened that night, and I don't want to know. I never found that motel again, no matter how many times I drove that road. But every time I pass by that stretch of forest, I feel that same sense of unease, and I can't shake the feeling that someone is still watching me. If you've ever experienced something you can't explain, something that left you questioning reality, I want to hear your story. Share it in the comments below, and let's uncover the truth behind these terrifying encounters together.